Hey everybody, my name is Ed. Okay, so today we're gonna have another trade review, although it's not really a trade, it's a one shot. It is going to be Kill Your Boyfriend, written by Grant Morrison, and the art is by Philip Bond. This is the original version from 1995. I know it's been reprinted a couple times. I know one time it's been kind of that kind of prestige square bound format. One time with this cover, and then another time with a new cover with this story and a backup story by the same creators. Okay, so Vertical DC Vertical Voices. Um, there you can tell it's the original issue because the back is an ad for Musicland Sam Goody. Remember this back when they still had record stores, okay? And let's see here. Mike Watt and the Chris Darte group. I'm not sure I know who I've heard of the Chris Darte group. I do know who Mike Watt is. Mike Watt used to be the bass player in a kind of a punk rock band called the Minutemen. And then after the singer died, he formed another group called Fire Hose. So just for shits and giggles, he used to be in a serious relationship with Kara Rosler. I'm not sure I'm saying her name right, but she used to be the bass player for like Black Flag at a short amount of time. What else here? There aren't too many ads in here, but again, this is right when they were kind of comics were kind of broadening their scope, and not just DC and Vertigo, but you had things like Love and Rockets, whatnot, attracting kind of a, for lack of a better term, kind of a rock and roll audience. So more of a young adult crowd. So the ads here. Ooh, uh, Michael Moorcock. Is that what this stuff is? Ads for Michael Moorcock. Hawkmoon, City of Darkness, Unseen, Midnight Blue. What is this? Oh God, I cannot read this. I can't read this one, but Midnight Blue, Dark Moon, oh, The Unseen. All right, okay. But now I wanted to show you. I think there was some more kind of. I'm sure there was some more rock and roll ads or music ads or something like that. Before we talk about the story. Uh, oh, Tank Girl. Oh, I'm pretty sure the Tank Girl movie came out around this time as well. But this is Tank Girl: The Odyssey, written by Peter Milligan, art by Jamie Hewlett. Britain's cult anti-heroine is taking a little trip to America. Expect explosions. 4-issue miniseries beginning in April. All right. Brian Boland art here. DC Online. More Vertigo ads. And of course, here's the editorial page. Editorial written by Paul Jenkins. Paul Jenkins is still doing comics, though not for DC, or not too many for DC these days. More on the indie level. Here's a checklist for Vertical Comics at the time. Goddess, Kill Your Boyfriend, Sandman, Books of Magic, Invisibles, Black Orchid, Sandman Mystery Theater, Hellblazer, Shade the Changing Man, Swamp Thing, Animal Man, Jonah Hex, Preacher. Preacher just started then. Oh wow. I thought for sure there was like an ad for like Skid. Oh, here it is. Origin of a New Species, Skid Row, Subhuman Race, featuring My Enemy, Breakdown, and Beat Yourself Blind. Produced by Bob Rock, management by McGee Entertainment. So Skid Row was this, obviously, well, maybe not so obviously, but Skid Row was this hard rock band at the time, and people kind of lumped them in with like hair bands and whatnot, although they weren't from LA. I think they stayed pretty much in New Jersey. Bob Rock produced a lot of big records at the time. He produced Metallica's record. I think he did a Motley Crue record. Um, he was just a big hard rock dude. McGee Entertainment. I do know Doc McGee was like the manager for like Motley Crue at the time. So, all right. So anyway, let's get into the story here, okay? And I'm gonna have to bring up my notes here because I actually kind of wanted to say a little bit about it here, okay? Ah, okay, here we go. Okay. So, Kill Your Boyfriend is a one shot comedy adventure teen rebellion comic by Grant Morrison and Philip Baum, published by DC Comics through their Vertical imprint in 1995. Grant Morrison was a rising star at the time. Morrison had enjoyed critical acclaim for his run on Doom Patrol, Animal Man, his first volume of The Invisibles, and Arkham Asylum. Bond is probably best known for his work here in The Invisibles, Tank Girl, and a few other works. Both creators are veterans of the influential weekly British sci-fi comics mag 2000 AD, which spawned many artists and writers who went on to find fame in the United States. The premise concerns a bored and disaffected English young girl. She's bored with school, bored with life, bored with her boyfriend, until she meets a strange yet charming young man. He gives her a sympathetic ear, gets her drunk, and they commit acts of vandalism. Eventually, they confront her boyfriend, kill him, and go on the run. The rest of the book chronicles their misadventures that include sex, robbery, murder, and a meeting of a group of art revolutionaries. Eventually, or ultimately, the girl, I should have written throughout, the girl learns to embrace life through their extreme adventures. The plot has the feel of a couple of on the run, of a couple on the run youth in revolt movies. You can find similarities two scores of movies from Bonnie and Clyde, Rebel Without a Cause, The Wild One, Heathers, The Graduate, Pump Up the Volume, True Romance, Natural Born Killers, and countless others. Although the story is humorous and lighthearted, it's also quite cynical. It's a partially dark coming-of-age tale and partially revolt film. The teen's crime spree is really quite pointless, and they are well aware of it. They admit that they're causing trouble just for kicks. The narrative, however, mitigates their violent acts by playing up the fact that the protagonists are young, good-looking, and likable, and the targets are one-dimensional or unsympathetic. The text even dismisses most of their rampage as youthful misadventures. In his superhero stories, Grant likes to blend several philosophies, art, literary trends, and pop culture in his comics. Dadaism, pop music, Silver Age comics all get thrown into the mix. He once said that he includes postmodern stuff as a window dressing to make the adventures tales more interesting, but that inclusion does give the stories a bit more weight and layers regardless. Around the time Grant did Kill Your Boyfriend, he was also doing The Invisibles. Although it was a sci-fi-ish action-adventure series, it explores similar ideas of youth revolt with a mix of conspiracy theory and pop culture fads. The Invisibles clearly attempt to blend superheroes and secret agents with a rock and roll pop star attitude. Characters like King Mob and Ragged Robin don't just save the world, they look hip and fashion conscious while doing it. Morrison also stated that he felt like the X-Men, which he wrote a few years later, were best as a metaphor for adolescence. New characters that Grant included in X-Men like Angel, Salvador, and Beak are deliberately visually unpretty and in contrast to many of the main team. Quentin Quire has a punk rock attitude and is overly dismissive of the rules of the Xavier School for Gifted Mutants. I probably should have rethought that point about Angel Salvador and Beak. Um, because there's been other characters in the X-Men comics, like the Beast, and even though the way the Beast went furries is it's not necessarily connected to the main X-Men comic, but when they brought him back to the X-Men, it did make sense. Um, the Beast, Nightcrawler, a few other characters that were created at other times. I'm thinking of, what was it, Maggot, and maybe a couple of other people, but there have been other characters that were not necessarily supposed to be pretty or good looking. There was a whole run of the comic that I missed that had the whole Gene Nation that was playing up a lot of the same stuff. Matter of fact, Gene Nation was supposed to be a kind of parallel to Queer Nation, back in the 90s and whatnot. But anyway, it was the whole. But anyway, we're getting back to the whole idea of, we're not the we're not the clean cut kids. We're like the stoner rebel kids or whatever of the school or what have you. That's obviously what the symbolism and metaphor and whatnot they were going for there. Anyway, getting back to this comic, plot wise, Kill Your Boyfriend is straightforward, although not terribly ambitious or complex. Basically, a couple moves from one situation to the next with no real direction or aim, which of course is the whole point. The characterizations are pretty good. The protagonists feel, if not completely realistic, then at least believable in context. Part of the storytelling method is part of the storytelling method that Morrison uses is having the main female character break the fourth wall quite often. It's used well here as it lets the reader understand her feelings and interpretations of the events. What's interesting is that the actions of the characters, while quite nihilistic and destructive, the tone of the context is lighthearted, and the ending, while dark, is presented as optimistic. It taps into that youthful energy that exists in certain movies and music trends across the years. I probably didn't need that. So let's see here. What's all this mean? Okay, so the message of the story is probably not super deep. Mostly it seems to be saying, take risk and enjoy life while you're young. The narrative doesn't really seem to endorse the reckless and sometimes murderous behavior of its protagonist, but there is sort of a visceral charge. Visceral charge through violence and crime. Perhaps it's made even more thrilling by the pure needlessness of it. It's interesting that the teens aren't rebelling against any overt oppression or wrongdoing. They are getting even with society that is boring and stifling. The art is fine. Phil Bond does a decent job. Dynamic and stylish enough to be charming, although not groundbreaking. I do like his kind of semi-boxy looking faces and figures. Okay. All right. I wrote here, Death, the High Cost of Living. All right. So I wanted to bring up this thing. I didn't write any notes on this, but just I wanted to throw it out there. So this was written in this came out in 1995. A Sandman spinoff called Death, the High Cost of Living came out maybe a year or two before. Maybe it was 93 or 94. And so that comic starred Death. And Death in the Sandman universe is always drawn as kind of this sort of semi-goth looking girl, but at the same time, she's kind of young and perky and funny and whatnot. So the premise of that story was that Death has to take the form of a human once every 100 years or so to get in touch with the human experience. And anyway, in that story, she meets this young man who at the beginning of the story she transforms a human, and she meets this young man who was going to kill himself, and he fails at killing himself. They kind of go on their journey throughout the city or whatever, and they meet different interesting people and whatnot, and they learn valuable lessons along the way. So it's a really interesting parallel. You got the kind of youth pop culture thing here where it's not specifically I don't want to call it like a punk rock thing, but it's got that. It's really that kind of, but it's got that British anger, right? It is a youth rebellion, and it is a youth rebellion here. There is bits, hints at like the rave culture and whatnot that are in this comic. Uh, High cost of living. Again, you've got the main character looks like a goth or an alternative rocker, and this actually kind of flips the whole. Ooh, excuse me, kind of flips the whole dynamic. Where in this story, you've got the girl who's kind of whisked off her feet, by her Prince Charming. Her Prince Charming being, that bad boy, and that kind of taps into that whole fantasy. Death, high cost of living, it's the straight laced boy, straight laced nerdy boy who gets taken away by this free spirited, independent young woman. These days they call it that, the manic pixie girl, right? So they're kind of similar stories parallel each other, kind of similar fantasies. One's that particular fantasy for boys, I guess, and one is that fantasy for girls. So I just think that was pretty interesting, and both are coming out mid 90s. The whole kind of alternative rock thing has gotten really big in pop culture, and these comics are all kind of tapping into that same sort of energy and vibe and whatnot. And then what else here did I write here? And this was, I guess, was supposed to be kill your boyfriend, embraces nihilism and cynicism, but also embraces hope. Okay, so just to show you some of the art, title page. Okay, I don't know if you can tell. It's made to look like it's written on a school notebook paper, right? We open up in a stressful situation here. Here she is on top of some high structure. She's carrying a gun. She says, "It was just high spirits." And then we flash back. Here she is. And here's a guy, although they haven't quite met yet, they just happen to be in the same bus. And here's some of Philip Bond's art. Like I said, it's nice, it's appealing, it's charming. Not super fancy. Up yours, Constable. And our girl is in school. And here she's all bored and stuff, fantasizing about, being sexually free and, shooting all the classmates and things. And then here's her boyfriend. He's kind of portrayed as this kind of nerdy, nebbish dude. Doesn't really pay her that much attention. She's trying to kiss him, and he's running off. All right. Blah, blah, blah. We must do something about these rambunctious kids. Parents just don't understand. Wah. Runs out, runs into dude, gives her some liquor. They go about messing around. And let's see here. The colors are nice too. Like I said, the art's mostly really simple and straightforward. Here's they break into somebody's house. They find this guy's got all kinds of kinky videos and whatnot. And here's our girl putting on makeup, pretending to be somebody else. It's like, oh, the freedom, the liberation. La di da. I'm not, um, I'm not giving too much away here. Here's a scene where they meet the art revolutionaries. You see the black guy. He doesn't have a Malcolm X hat on. He has a Malcolm Y hat. And this dude, of course, kind of looks like Andy Warhol. Here's some more crazy stuff. All right, and then that's pretty much it. Well, I shouldn't say that's much. That's pretty much it. That's there's a lot more to it, but I don't want to give too much away. Here are the authorities. They're on their trail. But okay, then that's enough for right now. So yeah, like I said, like I probably said prematurely, there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of violence for the sake of violence. The comic itself isn't super violent. It's not gory or anything like that. But like I said, the main characters commit all sorts of acts of violence and criminality and things like that. And there really isn't any real point to it other than them just sort of getting their kicks. So like I said, in that way, it's pretty cynical and nihilistic. But like I said, the intent of it was not to take that part of it seriously, but take the ideal of you know, break out of your shackles, enjoy your youth, that type of thing. That I think is supposed to be the real message of the story. So then, okay, I guess that's it. Thank you very much for watching. You guys all have a good day.